Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona. Let's proceed with the first question, Metta.
Yes, Ajahn Sona, good morning. And the first question is going to come from the live chat, and that is from Esther from Vienna, Austria. Respected Venerable Ajahn Sona, could you please be so kind and explain YONISO MANISIKARA?
Yes, YONISO MANISIKARA. These are two very important words. Before I define it, let me say that there's a quote from the Buddha. I think it's the Numbered Sayings 2. And this is also in Pali, Anguttara Nikaya, the numbered sayings. So there are two factors which are critical to the attaining of enlightenment: an external factor and an internal factor. The external factor is a wise friend, spiritually developed wise friend. In Pali, that's kalyana mitta. Mitta is the friend. Kalyana actually means beautiful. So spiritually beautiful, not just any friend and not just a handsome or beautiful friend, but a spiritually advanced friend. That's the external factor which is most valuable in the attainment of enlightenment. The internal value, the internal factor, is YONISO MANISIKARA, and usually translated as the capacity for wise attention or wise reflection. Yoni is the womb. So it's interesting, the womb. And mana is the mind, and sikara is doings. So womb, mind, doings. Which means, I think the womb is the source. Going to the source is where everything is born from. It comes out, emerges from the womb. So mind, mental activities, and intellectual activities, inquiries that go to the source of things, that go to the root cause of things. So this is not so strange to Western society either, is that we're always trying to understand the causal structure of things. How do things emerge from? We want to know where the universe emerges from. We want to know where life emerges from. We're inquiring into the sources of things. But so a person who is not, they're looking at the effects of things rather than the causes of things. They're not proceeding in the right way. So the person who wants to inquire, like, what are the causes of these things? We're always asking this: what are the causes of some sort of political situation? What is the cause of all these people on the streets? What is the cause of drug addiction? What is the cause of addiction and all this kind of stuff? Instead of just treating the symptoms, we want to know why are they there? What's the cause of these things? So we want to know in terms of our own psychology, why am I like I am? Why do I feel like I feel? What are the causes that cause these feelings? And bright people inquire all the time: psychiatry and psychology, sociology, historians. We inquire into the historical roots of things. So the Buddha is the ultimate YONISO MANISIKARA guy. So he inquires into the roots of suffering. First of all, he starts with the primary feature, which is only wisdom can determine what's the most important thing to concern yourself with while you're alive as a human. Is it the age of the earth? Is it winning the Olympics? Is it being a great mathematician or a musician or something? What is the most important thing to do? So the Buddha decides that to inquire into the nature of suffering, and this is primarily the suffering is emotional distress, and physical distress is the second. That's the biggest problem in existence, and that it would deserve the most attention. So we might say in modern times he's a psychologist and a philosopher. So this is, in order to do that, one needs this YONISO MANISIKARA, deep inquiry into the causes of things. And he comes up with this formula called dependent origination, paticca samuppada, in Pali, paticca samuppada. Dependent origination, which shows the causal structure of the arising of suffering, and it shows the causal process of the diminishment and eventual elimination of this suffering. Suffering is dukkha in Pali. So this is the meaning of this, and very important and useful words. We have equivalent words in English, so we don't have to use the Pali. But when you come across this YONISO MANISIKARA, it's very interesting, and it's also interesting that the way it's put is this inquiry back to the source of things, the womb of the problem. Where is the problem birthed from? Where does it rise from? Can we trace it back right to its initial causes? And then can we fix the problem by knowing that? This is what, I guess, cancer research and so forth is involved in. It's not just treating the symptoms, but can we prevent the arising of this to begin with? Why is it caused, and so forth. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next question.
The next question from the chat is from Ermina in Poland. Dear Ajahn Sona, let's assume a person followed the 5 precepts in a previous incarnation and continues to do so in this one. Is it possible that they experience very painful events? For example, Jesus Christ and Socrates were killed and Jesus was tortured. Is it possible that both were equally moral individuals in their previous incarnations, yet this happened to them? The purpose of my above question is to answer, are all very difficult experiences always karmic, or is it sometimes just being in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Both are necessary. You have a karmic debt. So, this is totally outside of the Christian view of things, why Jesus was tortured. Apparently his old man thought it was a good idea, but so this is not the Buddhist view of things. He would have been, from a Buddhist point of view, he would mean, seems to be very moral in this life, but had karmic debts that needed to be paid off. The parallel with the Socrates is very interesting because both of them could have avoided the situation. They chose not to. They could have escaped, in a sense, the karmic result, at least temporarily. It seems that Christ hung about in a situation where he knew he was going to be tried, and he seemed to have a very strong intuition that it was going to happen, and he chose not to avoid it. Socrates is the same. In fact, the whole story is so parallel that there's a lot of scholars that think that this story, in a sense, the story of Christ, is borrowed from the story of Socrates. Socrates is a martyr to the truth and is put to death, accused of heresy for undermining the morals of the youth of Athens by questioning the existence of the gods. And so he's questioning some fundamental virtues and ideas of the Greeks at the time. However, the charges are not actually correct. Socrates wasn't doing that. He was actually exploring the truth and inquiring into the truth and making people in power uncomfortable. So they needed certain charges to be produced in order to deal with him. And they gave him a choice to exile, just leave, or to be have to drink hemlock. He chose to stay and have to drink the hemlock, which is a very kind of exalted character on the part of Socrates. And so a very similar situation with Christ. He's choosing to remain. The charges against him are, again, they're not accurate charges. So the story parallel is phenomenal. But do they have karma? Are they bringing baggage from previous lives? Yeah, from a Buddhist point of view, they are. And you asked, does bad things happen to people? Do bad things happen to good people? Just because that's the time and the place, without any past negative karma. From the Buddhist point of view, no. As far as I can see, there's always a cause, and it's in the remote past. This is an interesting area. People from the West, or especially in a materialistic sort of thing, they often call this blaming the victim. So somebody has misfortune in this life, and then you say, well, you had past negative karma. And they say, well, you're just blaming the victim. The victim should have just nothing but sympathy, which is good. I mean, it's a misunderstanding of the nature of karma. We have sympathy for people who have unfortunate situations happen to them. But it doesn't mean that somewhere in the past, in another life, they had done some negative things, and it has taken some time for it to surface. Now, we're not blaming them. They're not calling them the evildoer. That was done in another life, in a sense, by another person. They are not that person anymore, but they are experiencing the results of that. But we see this in this life, stuff we did foolishly as a child. We fell off, and we're left with a scar. We fell off a table or a chair. We stick our fingers into something and get an injury and we don't know. We're rather innocent in this. Or maybe we're not so innocent as a kid messing around, but you end up with something that affects your life as when you're 80 years old. It was a childhood injury done in a fit of stupidity or whatever, and you're now experiencing the results. It's been buried throughout the previous 50 years, 60 years. And now they're emerging. The results are emerging. Now, you don't blame the person for the thing they did as a kid. They didn't know what they were doing as a kid. This happens with criminal cases as well. That's why they give very short sentences to child criminals, because they don't really have a moral sense. But it can affect their future, right? Once they've realized things, they're not a kid anymore. They wouldn't dream of doing that. But they're still paying the price of that. So that we see in this very life that kind of thing happens. You do something at a certain stage of life, and the results of effect rise in the far distant future. So this is presumed to be the case with karma, is that the things can be done in the previous life that rise in the future. Also, positive things, of course, as well. People try to challenge this through logic and so forth. What about in case of an air accident, a plane crashes and everybody dies. Do they all have the identical karma? No, they don't have all identical karma. All of the people are different ages, different experiences of life. Somebody maybe advanced cancer, and the plane crash is an easier way to go than the drawn out cancer situation. Others are only 3 years old; they have a life ahead of them. So the experience of the crash is unique to each person in the crash. They may all die. By the way, some didn't make the flight. In these cases where, like the 9/11, the towers, like first day in 3 years that somebody didn't make it into work that day. On the other hand, the first time that somebody had entered the Twin Towers was the Wednesday morning at 9:30. Showed up just in time for the collapse of the World Trade Center. You'll see that each person has unique situations. And even in mass events, each person experiences it in a different way. And they're at different stages of their lives, etc. So these type of attempts, logical arguments to overthrow the idea of karma have been there and done that in Buddhist history. Some people have ideas that these ideas are naive and haven't been challenged. They have been challenged by the best thinkers on the planet, and there are answers to these questions. So, yeah, let's go on to the next question.
The next question is from Ryan from Carl, Peru. Dear Bhante, regarding the origins of devolution and the Agaññā Sutta, could you kindly expound how the Buddhist cosmology of devolution can be reconciled with modern evolutional theory, if at all, please?
Okay, here we go. Evolution and de-evolution. In other words, things can degenerate. Evolution should not be thought of as necessarily improving the situation. I mean, classical evolutionary theory, Darwinian evolutionary theory, doesn't mean that things get better. What it means is that whatever is that survives is more suitable. It doesn't mean that it's better. It just means it's more adapted to the situation for survival. That's why it survives. And the adaptation is not purposeful. It's simply random conditions which preserve that particular species. So you're not evolving upward, and you're not necessarily evolving downward. You're just particular conditions allow survival of that type of being. We as humans hold the conceit that it must be evolution must be going upwards because we're the best, and we're better than monkeys and so forth. Well, we're not. I suppose from a human perspective, we're better than monkeys, but we're more sophisticated and so forth. But it's just the fact. It's not because we're better. It's just that it's more adapted to survival. It seems to be. Although that may end soon. Because the smarter we get, the more likely we destroy ourselves. So let's go back to this Agaññā Sutta. So the Agaññā Sutta is like almost like Genesis from the Bible, but it's the Buddhist story of sort of life as life evolves on the planet. It's rather similar, actually. Adam and Eve start out as this kind of pristine. Well, Adam's alone first. What is he? Is he a man? I don't know. He is a being. He has no identity, really. And only later is the woman introduced. And then there's this, they're still in a state of nature where they're pure and innocent. And then things go off the track and they fall out of Eden. So they degenerate, they devolve. So that's the same story, is that they're actually going downhill. So in the Buddhist cosmology, it's all of it is temporary, by the way. It's very ancient. So the correspondence, first of all, to modern cosmology, modern astrophysics sense of time is much closer to Buddhist senses of time than it is to Christian senses of time. The Christian idea is very small periods of time, a few thousand years, this and that. Buddhist sense of the ages of the universe is vast. It's actually along the lines of astrophysics. And universes are temporary. They come into existence and go out of existence. They come into existence, go out of existence. But there's a causal link between each cycle. So this is part of the some modern astrophysicists and physicists hold that the universe is cyclical. The Big Bang is doesn't come out of nothing. It comes out of some previous sort of conditions of a previous sort of universe, and that it'll occur again. So this is the cyclical version of things, and that's what Buddhism holds, is that there's a kind of an infinite number of Big Bangs, and they're not arising out of nothing. They're arising out of previous structures of previous universes. So vast, huge, and then eventually, inevitably, life is consciousness and life is a participant in this. So this is not against any kind of physical theory as well. Most physicists would say that virtually everything that occurs and is in the present, including conscious beings walking around on the planet, you and I and so forth, are absolutely predetermined to have arisen at the moment of the Big Bang. Everything that will arise is already causally predetermined at the time of the Big Bang. So, consciousness is somehow programmed into the laws of physics. So this is from a physicist's point of view, everything it's just cause and effect, and there's laws of why things go, but it's not random. It happens it's predetermined. So this is the Buddhist version of this, is also that things happen in a certain way, but they tend to say that consciousness, this is still a mystery. Lots of philosophers go on YouTube and type in philosophy of consciousness, and you'll just find hundreds and hundreds of philosophers, serious scientists. The last tricky thing is, what is consciousness? It's simply, in some philosophies they call it the hard problem. It's the hard problem of consciousness. What is it? Is it material? Is it physics? Or is it something else? Is it an entirely different law? Buddhism is along those lines, but they would say that consciousness devolves and evolves. Consciousness can spiral down into much less sophisticated forms and reemerge and go upwards. It can work in either direction depending on the causal structures. So consciousness can devolve and evolve. But don't take the Agaññā Sutta too literally. It is a kind of a way of looking at history, how our world system arises and so forth. What is interesting is there's no God involved. There's no God as the cause of all of these things. Buddhism doesn't require that factor in the development of the universe. But many other things are, the rising of consciousness and so forth, are causal laws. They're structures of laws. Yeah.
The next question is from Pali from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. Dear Ajahn Sona, Can a Buddhist sect be considered Buddhist if it does not teach the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path?
Yeah, well, can a mathematical sect be called mathematical if it does not teach that 2 and 2 equals 4? The essence of the historical Buddhist teachings is the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. That's the historical teachings. People, in all religious and philosophical sects, people have their own spins and so forth. And quite often, this is where you decide, like, are you still part of the group or not? This happens in politics as well. Like, are you a socialist or are you a communist? When does it become, when is it Buddhism and when is it not Buddhism? And people, this happened very early in the development of Buddhism. There are schools of Buddhism that introduce ideas and that are simply not found in the earliest historical texts. So they're inventions of, so there's two schools. One is that, well, it's a mystical teaching which the person accessed what the Buddha would have said, or sort of accessed some sort of access to the consciousness of the Buddha. And other schools would say, well, it's a monk fantasizing and imagining and making, what would we call, claims that are, that they feel are in accordance with Dhamma or the Buddha, but which we feel are unjustifiable. So it's up to the individual to decide, well, whether it falls within the useful realm of, under the umbrella of Buddhism or not. What we have is, left behind is the Buddha left behind a Vinaya, which is the rules of conduct for monastics, and precepts for lay people. And so there are lineages of Vinaya, and if you fall outside of the ordination process, so you're given an ordination under a certain set of rules, and if the ordination is not performed properly or incompletely, and you you're not committed to a certain set of rules, then we would consider you not a member of the monastic forum, So there are people walking around in robes out there that are not, the Theravada monastic order would not consider to be Buddhist monks. They're some sort of monk, they're some sort of practitioner, but they're not able to participate in the ordination procedures or given the status as a monk. You'll see this phenomena in Japan and China and certain Mahayana countries where they have so-called married monks. This is the Western term for it, married monks. Usually they don't refer to themselves as married monks. They refer to themselves as teachers, perhaps, or something like that. And they're married. They're married people. They shave their heads. They wear a certain robe, but they don't wear these robes. So this you see, we call Zen monk or something like this, but it's not. They're not actually ordained in the same lineage. So they wouldn't be part of the ordination lineage of this sect. So Theravada is committed to the early Pali canon as the word of the Buddha, and then the rules of conduct and the ordination ceremony that is laid down in that as the orthodox sort of definition of what the Buddha said and what the Buddha wished. It is, by the way, the largest remaining school in the world. It is the oldest school, theoretically, and it is the largest and still flourishing, the Theravada school. Many hundreds of thousands of monks and millions of lay people who commit to that sort of lineage and structure. And there are many little variations, and some of them are very fanciful indeed. Okay, next.
The next question is from Cole in Austin, Texas, United States. I have a long-standing recurrent issue where when I'm in the presence of someone who I greatly admire, like a teacher who possesses skills that I'm endeavoring to learn and study, instead of feeling naturally curious, open, and grateful, I feel diminished and lacking, nervous and insecure. I no longer care to inhabit this state of mind any longer. Can you give me some advice on how to address this in myself with the Buddha's meditative teachings?
Part of it, the first thing is to learn the art of mudita, which is sympathetic joy. You enjoy the talents and capacities of others. You feel, in a sense, that they are you. So you can be, when a great concert pianist is up on the stage playing, you feel like it's you. You're not jealous of them. You're not diminished by them. You participate with them, and they are a fellow human being, and you get to enjoy those talents that humans can exhibit, the capacities that humans can exhibit. You identify with them. So in a family, in a close family, if your parents or your children do well, you're elevated by that. You enjoy their success, right? You're not diminished because you can't do it. You're actually enjoy and made larger because you have these people that you identify with. So it's simply a matter of identifying in a larger way, not just with your close family. Now, notice in certain families, there's jealousy amongst the members of the family. That's a poor family. The right idea of the family is to enjoy the success of the people in your family, the good fortune. Even if you're not as talented as your brother, you are very proud of your brother, very happy for your brother, right? That's a healthy atmosphere. That's a healthy attitude. An unhealthy attitude is jealousy, and that's ignorance. So you extend that to all beings and say, yeah, wherever anybody succeeds, I get to participate. I get the bennies. I get to be happy with anybody else's success. So that's one way to think about it. Practice mudita. This is the third of the four sublime abidings. The enjoying the joy of others, reveling in the joy and well-being of others. It's you can just borrow other people's well-being, no charge. You get to enjoy others' well-being. Once you discover that you can do this, then you would do it all the time. So you're really appreciative of this teacher's capacities and so forth, and you really participate in that and enjoy that. Secondly, your own sense of insecurity and so forth. The only way to have self-esteem is through morality. So your morality gives you a sense of self-esteem, and a person with solid ethics should feel comfortable in the presence of famous, wealthy, powerful, etc. This is how you feel confident and at ease in the midst of, famous stars of various types. You can greet Einstein with full ease, sense of well-being, and self-worth. Your worth is really in your ethics, in your commitment to morality and ethics is your worth. And it should stand up under any circumstances in front of anybody. That is where you get self-confidence, and where you should get self-confidence is in your own ethical, commitment to ethics.
The next question from the chat is from, it is from the chat. Hello, Ajahn. Could the concept of consciousness stem from our over-reliance on nouns and the nature of language? How does this relate to the concept of name and form?
Yeah, you're inquiring. That's good, But usually it's not consciousness that is so much confused with nouns. It's self that's confused with nouns. The idea of a noun is a thing that is persists through time. It's not a process. It's a thing. And a verb is a process. So, to describe running and so forth that's a process. But the person who runs somehow is a noun. Bob runs. So, but that's where if we take that too literally, then we get confused because Bob is not a noun. Bob is not a thing. Bob is a process as well. He's bobbing. He's bobbing along the road. Bobbing, running is how it really is. There's a process of every element of the universe down to the atomic level is not a thing. An atom is not a thing either. It's a process. And people are not things, they're processes. And so the use of nouns is a naive confusion. When we say an apple, which phase, when is it an apple and when is it not? When it's rotten or when it's just coming out, out of the seed? Is it an apple when it's a seed? What slice of time would you call it an apple? So when we ask it like that, we realize it's appling. It's not an apple. It's a process called appling. So this is how we should understand consciousness as well. Consciousness is not a thing. It can never be a thing. Consciousness only occurs as a process. It's a process of which includes perception. And perception are also naming things. Naming things, so nama rupa is name and form. The person asking the question mentions nama rupa. Name, nama. By the way, so you can see the connection between Latin, Greek, and Pali. They have common roots. So nama, name. Rupa is form, name and form, and they're just general kind of terms to help. More or less, the nama is mind, and what we call that being, and the implication is there's mind behind it, and then there's a form for it as well, a body of some sort. So these are the. This involves naming, which could be nouns, and but Buddhism is very much about this. Don't get confused. The naivety of language, of nouns, is not the way reality works. But it's perfectly good. Don't discard using nouns. Don't go around calling everybody bobbing or petering or whatever. The wise person does not override the conventions of language, the Buddha says. So the Buddha himself says there's no self. And then he says, I went to the other village the other day. So I thought you said there was no I. But then you said, I went to. He says, the wise do not override the conventions of language. We still use the conventions. They're useful shortcuts, but they're not the real thing. They're just useful shortcuts. Yeah.
The next question is from George in Victoria. Good morning, Bhante. There's a Pali word that means consciousness release. What is the relationship between consciousness release and jhana? Is it past karma that flows out?
Consciousness release. Well, object, well, there is a kind of a reference to, under jhana, to concentration released upon an object or something like that. What that means is the release part is nibbana. Concentration which is released through this idea of nibbana, or released into nibbana. That's one way of using that. Its relationship to jhana is that jhana is concentration on deep concentration, and concentration, unfortunately, in English tends to be feel like a sense of tension, or something like that. But the jhana or samadhi is focus or unification of the mind with joy and interest. That's what we mean by jhana. And it's to be, for right jhana, it's to be on a spiritual topic that leads towards reduction of suffering. So this consciousness release, literally in Pali, consciousness is vijnana and release is vimutti, the liberation of consciousness. But so it's not, what that really means is that a moment of concentration can be released into this experience of nibbana, but it's not the conventional idea of sustained jhana or concentration over a period of time. These are sophisticated observations made in the commentaries and in Abhidhamma about this jhana. How does this jhana, jhana is the eighth factor of the Eightfold Path, and how is it necessary to enlightenment? Does it participate? Do you need to have jhana to attain enlightenment? Or is so-called vipassana, or insight itself, does that take place prior to the experience of jhana? Does it require jhana, or is it simultaneous with a moment of jhana? And these are questions long asked in the commentaries and by people. How much concentration do I need? Can I get some stage of enlightenment without having to go through the process of this samadhi, this watching my breath and this tremendous requirement of concentration? Or can I just sort of reflect on things and just realize something? This is deeply inquired into, and I will not give an entire discourse on it, but sometime I might. I guess I probably have over time. I've given some answers to that sort of question, but let's go on to the next question. Yeah.
The next question from the chat is from GCI. What is the Buddhist approach to autism and neurodivergence? Is there a different or adjusted approach to meditation in autistics, since the brain is processing the world in a slightly different way?
Well, this term autism and Asperger's and so forth is not known at the time of the Buddha, so we don't have any examples of that, any specific examples of that. But there are people, meditators, that have Asperger's or autism. I don't think very advanced autism, perhaps, but certainly mild neurodivergency. I've seen it in monastics as well. It can be quite useful. Some of the troubling emotional structures that non-divergent people have are absent in divergent people. So it could be an advantage in some times, But in certain social conditions, certain communications which are expected, maybe that's missing. The social cues are not there. The emotional underpinnings are not there. So that's a disadvantage for that person. But other types of troubling emotional entanglements which people have, which are very sensitive to the social dimension of people, are absent in them, so they don't have to deal with all that nonsense. So they have some advantages, some disadvantages, yeah.
The next question from the chat is from Jason. I'm curious about the past and future karma of a person that lacks empathy in this life. Would a psychopathic person be able to have right view?
Yeah, I would say no. It's exclusively no. The psychopath would have arrived with a great disadvantage, lack of empathy and ability to identify with others. So they see others as simply objects, and they play out their whatever they wish, whatever gratification they can get. And by the way, their ability to have gratification is very limited. They don't have the warmth and emotional state. They can't have access to the sublime emotional states of love, etc. They're simply compassion, love, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. They can't access those things, so they're excluded from that. They're actually isolated in the universe. They're actually alone in the universe. And until they have empathy, they can't join the human race. They can't join not just the human race, but the race of beings. They're excluded. They're in. It's like they're in a airtight glass unit, and they cannot participate. They can't enter. You enter into humanity actually through your emotions. This is what the Buddha defines a human as: somebody who has fundamental regard for the well-being of others. And there's a famous story about Plato's definition of a human, a featherless biped. So that's the material element, is something that stands on 2 feet but has no feathers. So there was another philosopher named Diogenes who was very disapproving of this definition. He walked into the academy. By the way, Plato taught in the grove of Academe, which it has become the academy, academics, right? He walked in with a plucked chicken and let it go in the lecture, in the middle of the lecture, because there's a featherless biped. Is that a human? The chicken doesn't become a human by plucking its feathers. And that's not what a human is. Now, obviously, a human might have 1 leg, and still be human. What is it makes a human? It is actually the moral center, the emotional and moral center that qualifies you for participation in humanity. And when it's very, very pure, you are even referred to as angelic. Other humans will kind of, while you're walking around on 2 legs and so forth, they'll say, that person is angelic. They're kind of purified, above human. And then others who are violent, they fall into 2 categories. One is animal, so that he's an animal. They're swinish. They're motivated only by the coarsest of desire emotions, and then demonic. So the psychopath is demonic, and you'll see this in these court cases. Start using this demonic, hellish, evil, etc. They're not regarded as human. And then the human is somebody who's bumbling along, has sympathy, empathy, and so forth. And then when it becomes extremely purified, then they become angelic. And this is we see it, we call them in this very life, like that. Or there's a certain category as become ghostly in this very life. The heavy addictions and so forth, they become dwelling in a kind of a, they're not evil, and it's not a sensory involvement. They're just they're in a separate parallel dimension with other humans. They're walking around, but they don't seem to be in our sphere of understanding. So this is the Buddhist view of beings and what consciousness can do. So the psychopath is excluded from humanity. Yeah.
The next question is from Confused in the United Kingdom. I did a 3-hour concentration meditation session today, both sitting and standing, focusing on the breath. At points, I experienced physical pain and strong boredom. Should I use these moments as an opportunity to contemplate dependent origination at the link of feeling and craving? And if so, how should I do this? Or should I continue just to try and watch the breath?
Yeah, just continue to try and watch the breath. That, like, your boredom is, you want to relieve your boredom by contemplating, dependent origination and so forth. It's just, you're looking for intellectual stimulation, so that's another food. So when you commit to doing your breath meditation and just pure samadhi, don't get distracted by reflection or anything like that. Just commit to that and see if you can finally enter into a state of clarification and sustained ease and joy with the breath. You set that goal and then don't fiddle with it. Other times, and especially afterwards, when you're walking around if you manage to get into a jhana or a good state of samadhi, even what we would call the preliminaries to jhana, there's a term which is commentarial. It's called upachara samadhi. Upachara means in the neighborhood of serenity. You're serene, but it's not deep enough to really be jhana. But it's very, very pleasant. It's in a very pleasant state of ease. You just don't feel troubled or no problems. Ease. And that's a very good time to, then you can turn your mind to contemplation of dependent origination, things like that. Yeah. And then your mind are likely to come up with insights that you can't get in your ordinary type of thinking, because it's scattered, it's too unsustained, it's distracted by the normal hindrances of the mind. Okay, last question.
Yes, the last question is from the chat from Rachel. Dear Ajahn, I'm struggling with equanimity in the presence of suffering. Compassion recognizes that a person doesn't want suffering just like me. Don't I want for them not to have suffering? It's hard to do this without feeling some vicarious discomfort. Please advise on how to develop this.
Well, you should have more compassion for yourself. If you don't want them to have suffering, why would you inflict it on yourself? You're suffering because they're suffering, and you don't want them to suffer, so you decide to suffer. So you'd be better off. You don't have to have equanimity. You can have loving kindness towards them. But loving kindness is not grief. So compassion is one of the least understood emotions in the West. Compassion is not sympathetic grief for those who are grieving or suffering. It is loving kindness for those who are suffering. And loving kindness feels good. It doesn't feel bad. You don't need to add to there's enough suffering in the universe. Why would you add to it? Why would you inflict it on yourself? Because others are suffering, you suffer too. And why do you suffer? Because you don't like suffering. So you're suffering because you don't like suffering? We have to analyze this. And it doesn't mean that you're cold, aloof, or uncaring. It means that you don't like suffering. And therefore, the healthiest experience to be in this world is with goodwill. Can I do something for you? Compassion, by the way, from the Buddhist point of view, is loving kindness for those who are suffering. Then you can have sympathetic joy, or loving kindness for those who are happy. And then you can just have loving kindness for anybody in any condition. But notice that there's no indication that you should suffer because others are suffering. Do not do that. You have an opportunity. Your particular situation allows you to be have loving kindness. So please stay with loving kindness and don't think that you need to inflict suffering on yourself because others are suffering. Okay, that is it for today. What is next week, Metta? What is next week? I don't know. It can't be a live stream, or it could be a pre-recorded live stream.
That's probably what it'll be.
Probably what it'll be is a pre-recorded live stream that you haven't heard, but is pre-recorded, but it's still, it was live. It's alive and dead at the same time. You'll stay tuned. Yeah. Okay.